The future for OS tournaments. The OS tournament community has, for a long while, remained free to play. This is great for the players and worked fine when tournaments were smaller in scale and mostly organized for fun. However, tournaments are scaling up rapidly, and we think there are some changes which will improve the community as a whole, both for players as well as staff members. The most common way players find tournaments to play in is through the forum page. This has worked fine in the past, but there are some things lacking that are becoming increasingly important. Tags have been a thing that have been requested for a long time. Being able to have tags such as rank limits, rule sets, also known as game modes, team sizes, and tournament status will let players find the specific types of tournaments they are looking for faster. Screening has been a major issue in the tournament scene. For a tournament to be badged, the organizers have to send a complete list of every registration to OS staff, who will then give a list back of players who are ineligible to play in the tournament. The issue with this, however, is that screening is notorious for taking a long time. It is common for a response to take 2 or 3 weeks, with no updates in between about how much time is remaining. This is a major contribution to the long time a tournament takes. Screening is an automated process for the OS staff, so it shouldn't take too much effort to get this sped up significantly. One proposed solution would be to have the entire sign-up process be done directly via the OS website. This way, players who are ineligible to play won't even be given the option to register for a tournament which is trying to get a profile badge. It's often pretty clear which organizers have hosted successful tournaments before. New organizers may lack experience and essential skills to run a good tournament. For this reason, to be eligible for a badge for your tournament, we propose the following clause. The tournament has to be organized and run by an experienced team of accomplished and reputable staff, or have been run at least once before without receiving rewards. In other games or sports, it is not uncommon to see entry fees being used in tournaments. Players or teams have to pay a small fee, which will then be used by the organizers for prize pools and other costs. The most obvious consequence of entry fees is that staff will get compensated for their work. Staff members, including hosts, referees, commentators, map poolers, streamers, and other roles, put in tons of their effort and free time to make tournaments possible and fun for everyone. While staff has currently mostly done all of this without significant compensation or recognition, with the growing scale of tournaments, it's getting increasingly more difficult to find staff members to make tournaments possible and run smoothly. Having a fair system of getting paid a certain amount for every match you referee, for example, would give staff more reasons to continue doing something they already love. As entry fees are a relatively new concept, there will likely not be enough revenue to pay back the staff team for the tournaments who will implement them for the first time. As entry fees become normalized in the community, the amount of registrations will increase again, which should be enough to solve this problem. Let's make a quick calculation for an example scenario. A tournament has a prize pool of $300. Entry fees are $5 per player. This means that there needs to be at least 60 registrations to break even on the prize pool. Once entry fees are normalized, a reasonable amount of registrations is around 100. This leaves $200 to be distributed among the staff team. Prize pools for most tournaments that aren't in the top tier have mostly stayed around the same throughout the history of OS tournaments. Most community tournaments won't have prize pools with values over $50. The reason for this is that it just isn't feasible for hosts to let this be any higher since there's no revenue coming back. Most tournaments with prize pools above this have achieved this through donations, fundraisers, or sponsors. As the scene grows, this will be unsustainable. Entry fees let hosts be able to give out bigger prizes to winners with not just purely monetary prizes. Physical prizes such as merchandise or trophies cost a lot of money to make and deliver, especially internationally, since they aren't usually made in bulk. With tournaments currently being mostly free to play, a lot of players sign up for tournaments without giving it much thought. This leads to an increased amount of players forgetting to show up to matches or intentionally not showing up to matches. If players pay a fee for every tournament they join, they will be more cautious with the amount of tournaments they enter and will take the tournaments more seriously. We can expect less forfeits and more competitive matches during the tournament, which gives a better viewing experience for the audience. Tournament live streams are known for being scuffed, whether it be due to the tournament clients or the players. Entry fees will mitigate the players' faults due to them taking matches more seriously. Players overall will be more responsive and show up to matches on time. Besides donations, another popular form of getting funding for prizes in current tournaments is through sponsorships. The companies who sponsor tournaments give some sort of compensation for having their branding on the tournament, usually in the live streams and/or videos. With the larger scale and more serious tournaments, more companies will be interested and willing to sponsor tournaments. More sponsorships leads to bigger prizes and more professional tournaments, which leads to more sponsorships, and it's a positive feedback loop. Sponsorships will also give tournaments a more professional or legitimate look, as they will be backed by another company or companies. Drawbacks of entry fees. The biggest drawback of entry fees is, of course, for the players. It can be hard to support a change that will make you pay more money for the same thing. The only thing is that it's not the same thing. Tournaments will be significantly more professional and prize pools will be substantially bigger. Entry fees do not have to be a mandatory thing, of course. Organizers can choose to keep hosting smaller, less professional tournaments, as not everyone wants to play in super competitive settings all the time. Besides paying not being fun, some players are outright not able to pay entry fees, whether it be due to their financial situation or because they do not have a viable payment method. In that case, we are working on a waiver application where players can apply to have their entry fee waived if they can prove they do not have the funds or proper payment method to enter. Entry fees are a relatively new concept in the OS community. As stated previously, the vast majority of current tournaments are free to play. Any tournament now that has entry fees will be met with low registrations and criticism from the community. This is also why we think it is important for more hosts to implement entry fees in their tournaments. Another big reason why players will not choose to play in tournaments with entry fees right now is that tournaments that have them are not eligible to be badged. We are talking to the OS tournament committee to try and remove this rule because in our opinion it is limiting the growth of the tournament scene overall. One of the biggest potential risks is that organizers will use the income in nefarious ways. An organizer may keep all the revenue for themselves without compensating the rest of the staff team fairly. This is unfortunately hard to counteract, but there are ways of minimizing the risk of scams, notably the aforementioned verification system. One thought that we had was that tournament hosts could be required to post a screenshot in the tournament forum post of all of the people that they've paid for how much and for what they've done. This would enshrine transparency into the system, and players would have a concrete answer to the question of where their entry fees went. Unfortunately, the changes we are proposing may not be beneficial for everyone. They are primarily aimed at making tournaments bigger in scale and more competitive, but some players don't want a hyper-competitive environment. Still, some of these changes are beneficial for those players. Tags can be used to differentiate competitive tournaments versus casual ones. The first thing that should be done is to remove the rule that tournaments with entry fees are not allowed to be badged. This limitation is a deal breaker for many players, which makes sense. If you are going to pay a fee, you should expect to at least see a badge in return if you are the winner. Secondly is that more hosts of competitive tournaments should implement entry fees. This will be a difficult step to make, especially for smaller tournaments, since there will be significantly less registrations at first. As the community grows to the idea, however, it will slowly be treated as just another normal thing. At that point, we will start to see more real benefits as mentioned previously. We are currently hosting a new tournament which has implemented a €2 entry fee for the rank range 1000 to infinity. We are hoping to be the first of many organizers to implement this for the future of OS tournaments. The forum post for this will be linked in the description. We have already discussed this subject with a lot of hosts, staff members, and players in the community, the majority of which agree that entry fees are overall a positive thing. The script for this video has gone through multiple revisions and has been checked for errors and improvements by multiple prominent figures in the OS community, both from the perspective of players as well as that of staff. Thank you to these contributors, and the voiceover was done by yours truly, FrenZ. If you have any further thoughts or ideas about anything regarding the state of OS tournaments, we'd love to talk about it on Twitter or in our Discord server. The invite link for our accounts will also be put in the description.